Hello, welcome to this video where I'm going to go through the evens of a practice ACT test. Again, ACTs are 60 question tests. I'm going to go through the evens on this slideshow, so numbers 2 through 60. So I'll just start off. Number 2, so a consultant charge is $45 each hour, works on a consultation, flat fee. How many hours of work would be included in a $210 bill? So linear equation, y equals mx plus b, where my slope is the hourly rate, 45. 30 is my flat fee, so I have my 210 equals 45x plus 30, 210 being the total bill. I'm going to subtract 30 on both sides and then divide by 45, and that means it is a 4-hour consultation, so G. With this one, just simplifying by combining like terms. So what I'm going to end up doing is taking a look at my squareds here. The t squareds. So I have a positive 1 minus 82, so that's negative 81 t squared. So that automatically is going to make it one of these bottom two choices. And then when you combine your t's, I have negative 59 plus the 160. And then I've got my, my 54. So this is going to end up being J. Alright, the expression is equivalent to, and this is one where you're going to want to distribute. So what I'm going to do is take my 4z and distribute it across. So 4z times z is 4z squared. 4z times negative 2 is negative 8z. 3 times z means I'm adding 3z, and 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So combine the like terms in the middle of this, and this is the expression that I get, which looks like J. Alright, the 6 consecutive integers below add up to 447. So these numbers are all going to add up to 447. So what I want to first do is just add going right down the column. So this is 6 numbers, so I have all my integers right here. So this is 6 of my x's. And then I'm going to add my constants together. And if you add up all these numbers right here, it's going to be plus 3. And I know that the sum of all these values is 447. So I end up with just a linear equation. I'm going to subtract my 3, so 6x equals 444. Divide both sides by 6, so x is 74. Okay, so the numbers that would be around it would be these other ones that are listed, but 74 is the x value. Question 10. So I'm given these points here. So this is a rectangle ABCD. So I'm given the vertices between these points. And I want to know what is the point for vertex D. So since it's a rectangle, what I'm going to do is basically look at the slope between these 2 points, and whatever the slope is on this short side would match the slope over here. So the slope, the rise over run, going from this lower point to the higher one is 3/4, meaning it's going up 3 and over 4. And then I'm going to do the same thing and apply it to this bottom coordinate down here. And if I go up 3 and over 4, this point right now is at 6, negative 6. So going up 3 means I'm going to add 3 to the y coordinate, and over 4 means I'm going to add 4 to the x coordinate, and that means I'm going to end up with 10, negative 3, and that is option F. So that's going to be all the way over here. And then again, you can kind of check by just making sure that that does look like a rectangle. Alright. Given the triangle, it's shown with exterior angles x, y, and z. What is the sum of x, y, and z? So this is like one of the exterior angle theorems. So I am given the 57 and 72, the x and the y, and z is over here. So what I'm going to do to figure out what x is take 180 minus 57, and that's going to come out to 123 degrees. And then I'm all the way up here by y. I'm going to take 180 minus 72, and that's 108 degrees. And then z, I can get by using the exterior angle theorem, which says I can take 72 plus 57, and that's going to equal z. You could have also focused on this inside just being a triangle. But this is going to come out to 50, I'm sorry. So this is going to come out to 129. Okay, so that's going to be what z is. And at the very end of this, we want to know the sum of all 3 of these values. So what I'm going to do is take 123 plus 129 plus 108. and I'm going to sum up these three values, and that's what they're asking for in this problem, and that's going to come out to 360, so J is going to be our answer. Alright, so there was a problem with the odds associated with this table as well, where a poll of 200 voters was taken. All 200 voters indicated one of the four candidates here. So you can read through this. It says if the poll is indicative of how the 10,000 people are registered, so 200 of the 10,000, how many would this person Lou have received? So I'm going to set up a proportion. If he earned 80 of the 200 total votes, how many would he have earned of the 10,000 votes? And again, it's a proportion that we can cross multiply. So I'm going to end up with 200x equals 80 times 10,000. And then your x value after multiplying and dividing, you're going to end up with 4,000 votes. And that is letter H. Alright, in the square, A, B, C, E. D is the midpoint of CE, so right at the top. Which of the following is the ratio of the area of triangle ADE to the ratio of triangle ADB? So what I would do is kind of just break this down into smaller ratios, I guess. If you took a look, and they're basically looking at, again, the smaller triangle versus ADB, which would be this one that I'm shading in. So I'm looking at the size of this one versus the blue one. And basically, if I were to cut this thing right down the middle, you'd see that this red part here equals a half of the total blue one. So that means that my ratio of the smaller one, which is I'm going to call 1, since it's half the size, I would have a 1:2 ratio to the triangle ADB. So my answer would be G. Alright, Janelle cut a board 30 feet long into 2 pieces. Alright, not 2 equal pieces, but the ratio of the length of the 2 pieces is 2:3. What is the length of the shorter piece? So I know that the whole board is 30 feet long. I'm going to just put a line here indicating where she cut it. And let's do this 2:3 ratio. So I'm going to just call this 2x, and I'm going to call this 3x. And I know that 2x plus the 3x, so if you added these 2 pieces together, would equal 30 feet. So 2x plus 3x equals 30. So 5x equals 30. And x equals 6. So you would think that our answer is G because it's right here, but it's not. It asks for what is the length of the shorter piece, and that's this piece right here. So you're going to need to substitute 6 in for x, and 2 times 6 is 12. So H is our answer. And again, one of these problems where you might get x correctly, and it looks like it's there because it's an answer, but it is not the correct answer given the question. Alright, this one, it's a rather lengthy problem. Sergio plans to paint 4 walls of his room with 1 coat of paint. The walls are rectangular, each wall is 10 by 15. He will not need to paint a single 3 by 5 foot window in his room and the 3.5 foot by 7 foot door. So he plans, or he knows how much each gallon of paint covers. And this is basically a problem where you're going to find all these separate areas, and then at the very end, you just take a look at how many gallons you would need. So this is a rather lengthy problem. It's not difficult. It takes a while to read through this entire thing and then come up with a strategy off to the side. The area of each wall, or I'm sorry, of the window. The area of the window is 15, and that's the part that he's not doing, and he does not need to cover the area of the door either, and that's the 3.5 by 7. So these are the 2 areas that he does not need to cover. And then the 4 walls, it says he's painting the 4 walls in the room, and the walls themselves are 10 by 15. So I'm going to take 10 times 15. So each wall is 150 square feet. There's 4 walls. So he has a total of 600 square feet. Okay, but we are not painting the window, which was 15, and we're not painting the doorway, which is the 24.5. So he has 560.5 square feet to cover, and each gallon of paint covers between 300 and 350. So 1 gallon's not enough. 2 gallons will be enough then, because even if it was 300, if I double that, it still covers 600 square feet, and that is within what we covered. If you did not subtract out the window and the doorway, then you'd maybe be compelled to answer 3 gallons, and that would be wrong, but we had to subtract out those 2 things. So my answer is G. For all values of a that are greater than 1, the expression here, and I have 3a to the 4th over 3a to the 6th. Your 3's, since multiplication is the operation here, the 3's can cross out. So what I really have is a to the 4th over a to the 6th. If you subtracted them, 4 minus 6 would give you -2, and that would just basically go in the denominator as a positive. The way that I look at this is that there are 2 more powers of a on the denominator than the numerator, but I need to put a little place filler up here, so I'm going to throw a 1 up there. So 1 over a to the 2nd would be your answer. Alright, the fixed costs of manufacturing basketballs in a factory, so they're giving me a daily fixed cost here. Variable cost, $525 or $5.25 per basketball. Which of the expressions can be used to model the manufacturing for 1 day? So again, $525 is the cost per basketball plus the $1,400 per day. And then they're basically just flip-flopping this and writing it as 1,400 plus 5.25. Again, pay attention to the fact that in this first example, even though it writes the slope first, it has a minus, and that's incorrect. We need the plus sign there, and you need to watch where the variable goes. So this one is going to be k. Forgot the little b right there. All right, with this one, so if, and it's giving me a statement here, if this is true, then what is the value of a? There's a couple ways you can logically think through this. If your numerator remains the same, then a would have to be some sort of number that would multiply by the square root of 7 to get to 7. And if you kind of just do a guess and check on that, you're really just thinking about, hey, what number would I have to multiply by to get to 7? I could also just divide both sides by radical 7. And this is not one of my answers. So what I would do in this case is rationalize my denominator. Okay, so what I really have here is 7 radical 7 over 7. These cancel, and I'm left with the square root of 7. So that is going to be your answer. You could also cross multiply, and that wouldn't really get you in any different of a situation. You'd still end up at this point where you'd have to rationalize. Alright, a hiking group will go from a certain town to a certain village by one of 4 roads. From a village, so there's 4 roads. Village of one of 2 bicycle paths, so I have 2 paths. And then from the waterfall to the hiking campsite, there's a total of 6 trails. How many routes are possible? So this is a thing that's called the counting principle of probability. I can do 4 times 2 times 6. So I'm going to basically multiply these 3 values together, and there are a total of 48 possibilities. Okay, so that would be like if I said that you have a lottery that's picked 3 numbers and you have 10 digits. Well, you have 10 options for the first, 10 for the second, 10 to the third, which means you'd have 1,000 possible options. Okay. Next one, formula used to compute current value in a savings account. So this is an interest formula. So A is the current value, P is the amount deposited, called principal, R is the interest rate for one compounding period expressed as a decimal, which is huge, and N is the number of periods. So which is, and they're really just going to have you substitute some values in here, which is the closest value of the savings account after 5 years. And we have $10,000 deposited at 4% annually and compounded yearly. So what I'm going to do is just take these values and substitute them into the formula. And again, 10,000 was my initial value. My rate, it says expressed as a decimal. 4% as a decimal is 0.04. And this is 5 years. And since it's compounded yearly, that's 5 periods. So that N would be my 5. Throw that in your calculator, and I have 12,167. And that is G. Halfway. Alright, so given these 2 expressions, we're going to do, this is what's called a composition. So f of g of x. What that means I'm going to do is take my g of f function, or g of x function, which is this, and I'm going to substitute this in for x in my f of x function. So I'm going to basically rewrite my f of x function, which said 4x plus 1, but instead of putting an x here, I'm going to write x squared minus 2. And what I'm going to do is distribute next. So 4x squared minus 8 plus 1, and that's going to simplify to 4x squared minus 7. So H is the answer there. With these next ones, we're going to be doing a lot of reading here. Lines A, B, C, and D are shown below. A is parallel to B. Which of the following angles must be supplementary to angle X? So these are very similar to those diagrams that have two parallel lines and a transversal running through them. So I'm only given, though, that A and B are the parallel lines here. So you can read through all of these. Let me see here. 1 and 2, this is a linear pair. 1 is a linear pair. 2 and 10 are corresponding. 9 is same side interior. So what I'm really looking at here then would be angles 1, 2, 9, and 10. So between a linear pair, which these two are, between 2 and 10 being corresponding angles, which are also following the parallel lines theorems, and then with 9 being a same side exterior angle, there are 4 possibilities. So H would be my correct answer. Which of the following is equivalent to this inequality? So 4x minus 8 is greater than 8x plus 16. So a couple ways you can do this. If I subtract 8x on both sides, I'm going to get negative 4x minus 8 is greater than 16. Add 8 to both sides and get this. Here's the crucial part. If I divide both sides by a negative, you flip the inequality to go from greater than to less than, and just be careful on your signs. So x is less than negative 6. So F is the correct answer. For the right triangle, KLM, what is the ratio for sine M? So what I need to first do is figure out this value using the Pythagorean theorem. So 10 squared plus x squared equals 12 squared. 100 plus x squared equals 144. X squared is going to come out to 44, so x is the square root of 44. And again, that's this value right here. And if I want to know the sine of angle M, that is the opposite over the adjacent, so ratio of opposite to, hypotenuse, not adjacent. So sine M equals my opposite, which is radical 44, over my hypotenuse 12. So I go down this list of all those options, and that is letter K. So if this would have asked me for cosine, I wouldn't have to do any of what I have in green. Cosine would just be 10 over 12. But since it's asking for sine, I need to find this missing side first. Alright, if there are 8 times 10 to the 12th hydrogen molecules in a volume of 4 times 10 to the 4th cubic centimeters, what is the average number of molecules per cubic centimeter? So what I'm going to be doing is dividing both of these expressions, and I'm going to show you something that this kind of reminds me of. It's going to work the same as if I would just say 8x to the 10th over 4x to the 4th. It works the same way. What you would do is divide your whole numbers out, and you would subtract your exponents. Okay, so this is going to work the same exact way then. What I'm going to do is divide my whole numbers. So I'm going to get my 2 times 10 to the, and it's 12 minus 4, which is 8. So that's going to be option H. Alright, what is the rational number that is halfway between 1/5 and 1/3? So this is the type of thing you probably could go to the calculator for. I'm going to show you how to basically just average 2 fractions. You're going to add these 2 numbers together and divide by 2. So I'm really just averaging a couple of numbers here. So my common denominator on top, I guess I could bring this whole thing over. My common denominator would be 15. 5 needs to be multiplied by 3. The 3 needs to be multiplied by 5. So what I really have is 8 over 15 over 2, which is really equal to 8 over 30, because this 15 would multiply on the denominator. And then by simplifying this fraction, I would get 4 over 15. So when it says rational number, they're expecting you to put this in a fraction form. Even though 1/5 simplifies to 0.2 as a decimal, 1/3 is pretty ugly and it goes to 0.3 repeating. So I would definitely not use a calculator there. Alright, in the figure below, the area of the larger rectangle is 50 square centimeters. The area of the smaller square is 18 square centimeters. So I want to know what x is. So a couple things I'm going to look at in this case, and I'm going to define another variable here. I'm going to call the whole side of the square y. So I know that y squared is 50, because that's the area of the entire thing. I'm going to simplify this and figure out what my side length y is by taking the square root. The largest perfect square that goes into 50 is 25, and that happens twice. So this is what I have so far. I know if I take, basically looking at this side length, if I want to know what this part is right here, I'm going to call this y minus x. It's the whole thing minus this little part. So I know that if I take this little part and I square it, that's equal to the area of the square, which is 18. So what I can do is square root both sides of this. And I'm going to get y minus x is going to be equal to radical 18. So y minus x is equal to, and the largest perfect square that goes into 18 is 9. That happens twice. Y minus x is equal to 3 radical 2. So what I can do is create an expression for x or y here. And x is equal to, so if I solve this expression for x, I would get y minus 3 radical 2. And I knew what y was equal to up here, since we knew the area of the large rectangle, or I'm sorry, larger square. So what I'm going to do is substitute that value in for y. So I'm going to take 5 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2, and that's going to give me 2 radical 2. So G is our correct answer. So a lot of simplifying radicals on that problem and just coming up for expressions. With this one, I did kind of a guess and check on this. If A is less than B, then the expression absolute value of A less than B is equal to which of the following? So you're talking about subtracting two numbers, one being less than the other. So I said, okay, suppose A is 2 and B was 5. And I said, okay, if I did 2 minus 5 inside the absolute value bars, that would give me the absolute value of negative 3, which is positive 3. So if I look at A minus B, which would be 2 minus 5, that would just give me negative 3. What I'm looking at is A minus B, which came out to positive 3. So that's really just the opposite of what A minus B is. So what I really have is the opposite, of A minus B. And that comes out to, that comes out to option K. So again, I kind of just decided to pick a couple values. You know right away that if you pick a smaller number and you subtract a number that's greater than it, that the answer is going to come out to a negative value. But if you take the absolute value of something, it always comes out positive. So this is what you end up with. In the complex plane, horizontal axis, we have a real axis, and it says the vertical axis is our imaginary axis. We're given a complex number here. The modulus of the complex number a plus bi is given by, it's given us the square root, which of these below has the greatest modulus? So z1 in this case has the greatest distance from the x-axis. Okay, look how far away that is compared to the other values. So this whole a plus bi and square root thing really is talking about which of those would be largest. So this a squared plus b squared would be the largest at z1, just considering how far it is from the real axis. So again, this is one of those problems you'd really have to read through and then understand what it's talking about when it's talking about this modulus and how it's defined, and really it's talking about the greatest distance from the x-axis. With this one, graph of the trig function, 2 cosine 1/2 x is shown below. The function is, and it's really talking about even and odd functions. Since it is symmetric about the y-axis, that proves that it is an even function. So that means that f of x is equal to f of negative x. Basically means the left side is equal to the right side values, just taking a look at y values, and therefore it is even. So that is option F. With this one, figure below, line Q in the standard coordinate plane has this equation, intersects line R, which is distinct from line Q at a point on the x-axis. The angles A and B are formed by these lines and are congruent. What is the slope of R? So negative 2x plus y equals 1. Y equals, and I'm going to bring that 2x over to the other side by adding it. So I'm putting this into slope-intercept form. Okay, and what you're going to notice is when these two angles crisscross, with these two angles being congruent to each other, what it means is their slopes are opposites. Not opposite reciprocal, because that would make the lines perpendicular to each other, but one of the lines is going to be increasing at a slope of 2 over 1, which means the other slope has to come down and be negative 2 over 1, which is the same thing as option F, which is negative 2. Alright, this one I'm talking about a radio signal, so we had done something like this on the odd problems. It can be received between a 52-mile radius in all directions, so we have this map of coverage here. And this is going to be an area problem. It's looking for the area in square miles of this region. So A equals, and it's pi r squared. So pi 52 squared, which is about 2704 pi, which if you multiply this out and round, it comes to 8495, which is approximately 8500. So J. So this is more or less just an area of a circle problem, and knowing that area of a circle is pi r squared. This next problem, also dealing with these circles here, it's talking about, in this problem specifically, another transmitter that's 100 miles apart. Radio signal can be received only within a 60-mile radius in all directions. So what I really have is this one out here at 50. If I were to have another signal that's out here at 100, what it would do is create another circle. And what I'm looking at is this distance that's between these two values. So we're looking at this overlap. So if the radius of the other circle is 60, that's going to take me all the way back over here to 40 on my x-axis, because 60 and 40 would total to 100 over here where the signal is. And we're looking at how many miles along this highway can both stations receive. So once you hit 40 all the way up to 52, you're getting this area right in the middle of both. So 52 minus 40 means 12. So 12 miles along that freeway. All right, for every positive two-digit number x with the tens digit t and units digit u, I'm gonna read this again, with tens digit t and units digit u. Okay, let y be the two-digit number formed by reversing the digits of x. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to x minus y? So I'm going to substitute some values here. I'm going to let x equal my tens digit plus my u. I'm going to let y equal my 10 u's plus my t. So x minus y equals, I'm going to take my first expression, just do a little substitution, my first minus my second. So I'm going to take 10t plus u minus, and then the second expression, 10u plus t. Make sure you threw that second one in parentheses. So 10t plus u minus 10u minus t. And I'm going to basically take a look at this and simplify it by looking at some of my u's and t's. I have 10t minus a t, which is 9t. And I have a u minus 10t, which is minus 9u. And what I can do with this expression is factor out a 9 out of both of these expressions. So if I divide those expressions by 9, I am left with t minus u. And that is option F. And then lastly, the sum of an infinite geometric series with the first term a, common ratio, r less than 1 is given by this formula. So again, they're giving you the formula. The sum of the series is 200, and the common ratio is 0.15. What is the second term of the series? So what I'm going to do is rewrite my formula first, just by substituting in the values that they're giving me. So 200, oops, I'm sorry, this is A1 by the way. 200 equals A over 0.85. So my first term is 170. It is giving me a common ratio, and you need to know how a geometric series works for this, or even a geometric sequence rather. If your first term is 170, to get to your next term in a sequence, what you would really do is multiply by the common ratio. You're always going to do that between terms. So if I take 170 and multiply by my common ratio of 0.15, I'm going to get 25.5. So that's going to end up being my second term of my series, and that is option F. So again, a lot of material in this video going over all these questions. Not as much trigonometry as I would expect to see on the actual ACT. Just some of the basic sine, cosine, tangent. This one seemed to have a lot more with writing algebraic expressions, it seems. But again, it seems like all those tests are going to vary.